you
Nope,
pass it
I'm
on
gonna let you
over.
handle it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you wanted me to. She
I
was
will
worried
say my
because she's at
name.
her conference. Yeah. So, all right, everybody. Today is Thursday, December 1st. We have hit the final month of 2022. Kind of hard to believe, but this is Office Hours. I am one of your hosts, Heather Cox, and with me today are also
Victoria Dean.
And Andrea Sangrio.
And Andrea, thank you, Andrea, for joining from the conference. I know how hard that can be, but we've got with us Craig and Stan, and yeah, they're going to talk about doing more with less through low code and that Power Platform governance. So, guys, we'll turn it over to you and on with the show.
Perfect. I do want to thank everybody for ramping up my anxiety level talking about Power Platform or PowerPoint online. I spent the last 20 minutes making sure everything works. So appreciate that just to get me going. Andrea asked me to join again. So yes, I enjoy coming, but honestly, I just do what Andrea tells me and keeps everybody's happier that way. I did what any smart person would do, is just bring smarter people with me. So I have Stan Ray, who's here with me. Stan is a technical specialist focused on business applications, both Dynamics 365 and Power Platform. We're going to talk today just about an overview of Power Platform, just what's all included in Power Platform, just some licensing considerations, not in-depth licensing, but enough to get started. And then we'll wrap up with Power Platform Center of Excellence. Stan, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for having us today. So many of you have probably seen this slide before in the past. I'm just going to run through this really quick. So there's 5 components to our platform, right? First, starting from the left, Power Apps, right? Those are our Canvas and model driven apps. Of course. Second pillar, right? Power Automate. This is our integrations, our workflow, our triggers of, hey, someone submitted a request, let's send them an email that says your submission has been received, or hey, a case has been closed, or really just notifying people, right? So we've got that automation piece to do what humans used to do, right? And have triggers to do that automatically. We have a wonderful Power Virtual Agent. Those of you might know that there's one for Azure, but we have one called Power Virtual Agents that's got a really nice editor in it. It makes it really easy for a business process owner with no coding skills to basically create a bot experience so that we can interact with people. And out of the box, it has connectivity to our Dataverse database, so we can even call records or create records as part of that bot. And so do more with less in today's universe is the theme, right? We have to be able to scale and do more. Bots really help us sort of hit the low-lying fruit. Next one over, Power Pages. We like to change the names of things frequently. That used to be Power Portals, but think of that as sort of that web experience. Power Pages is great, and we'll have a slide for that in a minute, but to scale up, so maybe we don't want to license every person in the business. Maybe we want to put those forms on a portal and just pay for when we come and use the portal, right? As opposed to licensing someone for 12 months of the year. Power Pages is also really spectacular for engaging external people to your business. So outside of the AD, business partners, parents, those people who generally aren't in our Azure Active Directory that we still want to authenticate and interact with, let them enter records and see existing records. Last but not least, Power BI, that's our reporting and data visualization tool. Wonderful, out of the box, it can snap onto any databases such as Dataverse. And in those Power BI visualizations can be embedded in app and portal experiences, right? One of our strengths at Microsoft is engineered to work seamlessly together. Across the bottom, we have upwards of 850 pre-built connectors. You can build your own connector. You can use data gateways, which will allow us to connect to on-prem databases. We have built-in AI capabilities as well, so that we can learn from our data hosted in our cloud. We, of course, have what's called Microsoft Dataverse, thing that I'm most into. And that's really a data store. We have a separate slide on that. We have our own language called PowerFX. Those of you who built Canvas apps, you know what that looks like. It's sort of a function bar that lives on the top of the designer experience. And then, of course, we have the way to manage environments Environments are where all this stuff lives, right? And the typical business is going to have multiple environments, dev, prod. We could have different environments with different databases for different purposes. So all this encompasses Power Platform. You can buy bits and pieces of it as your business evolves into it. Next slide. Now, we won't spend too much time on this, but what we've seen in the past historically on the left is where people used to just go out if they had budget and money in their pocket, they'd sort of buy best of breed, whatever that certain group wanted to do. And ultimately, it kind of led itself to be, a large container of lots of different things. And there was lots of connectivity tissue. There's points where there could be some security breaches and really made it hard to communicate. But if you see on the right, this is our strength at Microsoft here is we have one platform. It all lives on Azure. And then we have all these tools in obviously M365, but we have our first party applications, Dynamics. And then you could also build your own using Power Platform. We can work with ProDev and we can work with citizen developers like myself. Along the top there, I have an, excuse me, my voice. I have another slide here. We actually curate at Microsoft our own education industry accelerator, which is going to give you a whole bunch of components that you can pull into your build for free. Next
Dan, we
slide.
have a question about Dataverse being turned off in the default environment.
Can access to Dataverse be turned off in a default environment? Well, I'm not sure that we can turn it off because it's needed. However, we can limit people going into it and editing it. And that's actually part of the governance stuff that Craig will cover on. We don't really want people building in the default environment. We want to be creating new environments and let people work in those, and we can control what they can do in those environments. We can double check that, but I'm not seeing that people are turning off the default environment. We might need it to run other apps and some of the stuff that comes with the M365 entitlement. So it would be remiss for me to not go forward, but to say, hey, we have this entire suite of first party applications. We call it Dynamics. I know the screen looks like a lot, but what we do is we listen for customers' requirements and we understand, hey, Stan, I want to build a pipeline of potential student applicants. Instead of maybe building that from scratch, you might be able to use our dynamic sales application. Or I want to better communicate with my employees and my parents and my students. You might want to purchase the marketing app, which is wonderful for mass email communication and running events, both webinars and live events, right? So what we want to do is help you understand, help to understand your requirements. We might steer you towards one of our first party applications. All you would have to do is tweak it a little bit for education, and then you could, use world-class capabilities here. Gartner, we're winning a lot of awards for all of these different things. We'll end this slide with saying we have a thing called Customer Voice, which is a wonderful surveying tool, really fantastic, easy to use, seamlessly integrates with the Office experience and with Power Apps. And a lot of times people don't know about that, but if you want to learn more, reach out. We can definitely introduce you to Customer Voice. I think this slide's more catered towards we can have citizen developers all the way onto the left, all the way up to your pro dev. And like myself, I don't have any formal coding, but I'm incredibly dangerous with designers, so I can build very robust experiences without any code. Not to say you won't need any, but and it interplays with all of the other technology of our stack. Next slide. Sorry, I'm going so fast. Craig needs time to go. Okay. So Dataverse, right? It's more than a database, and I won't like drain the whole slide here, but when you think about it, like first off, if you're trying to build an application that is HIPAA compliant, Dataverse checks that box with a whole bunch of other compliances, right? So right away, if you're thinking about building an app and you need that, then that's certainly a thing that this does. It also provides robust security roles. So when you build an app that uses Dataverse, you get those same security roles you do in the Dynamics experience. So I might build an app where Craig doesn't even see certain records and vice versa. I can say, well, it's okay that Craig can see my records, but only in a read-only capacity. You can get super granular down to the record level and even the field level with security roles. It has really nice ways to you create robust data model. It has auditing built in, so you just flip a switch and turn it on. It has things called business rules, which will allow you to, which keep you from having to have too much code in the form for hide show fields, do calculated fields, dependent pick list fields, things like that. So, and of course we have integration with Dataverse. We have both a data gateway that lets us connect with other on-prem data sources, and it comes with its own API to connect to other cloud databases. Next slide. Want to mention this really fast. I was kind of involved in this from the get-go. We've got an education accelerator where we have upwards of 70 to 80 tables and all the fields in those. So it's really nice documentation. You can download an Excel spreadsheet that lists all the tables and all the capabilities that come with it. The Accelerator is not a finished app, more say it's like Lego building blocks for you to build your own app. So for example, if I wanted to build an app for students for they could see internships and scholarships and apply to them, we already have that, right? All you have to do is sort of build your interface the humans will interact with, drop those tables in there, and you're good to go. So just wanted to make everybody aware that this is out there, and it grows every year. We have a new version, and so really great capabilities there that you might not have to invest in building from scratch. Next slide. Wow, a lot to this, but when Craig and I are working with this, we're kind of putting people in persona buckets, right? So when people are trying to figure out how to build apps, it's like, okay, is this app for employees? Is it for teachers? Is it for parents? Is it for partners of our school, right? And then once we know who that is, we can decide whether they should use an app or whether it makes sense to let them use a portal or both, right? So when we're using a portal, for example, the requester is entering data in a form, but then that falls into a backend app where I have it highlighted in red here. So there's always going to be people in the backend who triage and close these requests, right? So it's a blend of all of this stuff. So when we help you sort of figure it out, so make it most cost effective for your business and grow into it. Next slide. Okay, a few quick slides on licensing. Probably this is the most important slide to think about when you're looking at. First off, A3 and A5, there's no difference in the entitlements you're granted for Power Apps. You get to use standard connectors, right? And we can send anybody who's interested, we can send you a link of what are the standard ones, what are the premium ones, right? So what does that mean? You can typically build an app that lives on SharePoint Online or Excel. You can even use Dataverse for Teams, which is a smaller version of Dataverse that's included. And if you build something in Dataverse for Teams, that app has to live in Teams, right? So that's sort of what you get with your entitlement, and that's great. And you'll hear the phrase personal productivity. A lot of those kinds of apps are going to live in the default environment, okay? Everything to the right. So if you wanted to create an app experience that connects to on-prem data store, that uses the gateway, that's premium. Or if you want to connect to Azure storage or some other cloud database that you could potentially use a custom or a premium connector, that's premium nature, requires additional licensing. And of course, all the way on the right there, sort of my love, Dataverse, right? If you use Dataverse, that's premium. If you want to use a portal experience pages, right, that has to interact with the Dataverse database to use it. So we understand that there's a lot on this slide. We want to help you to unpack that, but there's some things you can get with your M365 entitlement. There's others that are premium. Next slide. Now, when we talk about Power App licensing, there's kind of two apps, right? Two flavors, right? One is a per user concept. And by the way, there is no difference between a builder license and a consumer license. So based on the previous slide, if the app is premium in nature, both the builder needs the premium license and the app consumer would. But the most common license we sell is the Power App per user, because when you buy that and apply that to an individual, they have unlimited app building and portal visit capabilities, right? So it's all inclusive in the sense that they can basically do anything. We also sell it in a per app capacity, but I rarely see anybody buy it because that license is just for one single app, right? And the delta in price between the per app and per user is pretty small. So it makes sense most 99% of the time people are buying the per user, just gives them that flexibility, especially when you deploy your first workload. People love it and they're like, okay, let's build process 2 through 20, right? You're covered with the Power App per user.
The other thing to note is the Power App license gets you access to the premium connectors. So
that's right.
There's no connector license. It's either a Power App license that we have here, or it's what you have with your entitlement. It's one or the other. By paying for the Power App license, that gets you access to the connectors.
Right. Any connector you need to use or any flow that gets triggered in app is included. Okay. Next slide. Now, converse to that is anything that you want to build that's outside of the app experience, we can license just the Power Automate. So for example, as I have down here, if you bought Power Automate per user, that's typically like your back-end central IT people where I'm just reading the question. So yeah, so for those people who are the builders that are going to build a whole bunch of flows and they're outside the app experience, that's the good license to have for the builders, the PowerApp per user, so that you have an unlimited capacity to build. And then that license also increases the number of API calls you can do from 10,000 that you get with your M365 entitlement to 40,000 API calls a day. We also license Power Automate per flow. And the best way I can describe that is, let's just say I worked with a academic medical center, and they had basically a form that upwards of 50,000 people could fill out. Well, the use of the form was free, but what we did was we had the button that said submit. We had licensed the flow under it. So when they filled out the form and click submit, we scrape the form and take the data and send it to another database. So you can think of the Power Automate per flow as you're basically licensing the flow execution, and anybody can run that flow, right? That's the use for that. So we've got those two kinds of Power Automate license. I'm almost finished if we want to go to the next slide. And then I'll pass it to Craig. So there's a couple of other things to think about. So when you buy these licenses, you're going to get a little bit of storage, right? Database storage that comes with those per user licenses. Your first time purchase, you get 10 gigabytes of storage as well to when the very first time you make an initial purchase. And then sequentially, as you buy more users, you'll get more storage. However, over time, you will build a database full of records, right? And you'll start to use storage. So you can buy more storage. We have 3 different storage types: database, file, and log. And those can just be purchased in your tenant. You'll see your consumption, and you can even, as an admin, set up a notification that at 80% of consumption, it'll tell you that. Now, if you were to exceed a little bit, it's fine. I think it won't stop working till you're well over of exceeding what you have. But if you slightly go over, you're going to be fine. You could true up. We also sell our portal visits, our pages, right, in unique contexts in a given month. So if I were to go to a portal on the 2nd of the month, I'm good for the rest of the month. If I came in late in the month, I'm covered for the rest of the month. So we're just really, it's unlimited visits and unlimited processes you can run through a portal. It's just unique content. We sell it in unique context per month. And of course, it gets cheaper the further you go. And then the very last one here is, and this kind of came up a lot during COVID, was we had people that were running processes in large volume and doing lots of API calls every single day. And so it really just depends on what you're building, and we can work with you to understand that. And the premium licensing helps with that. But if you really have something that's going to get hit a lot in a given day, and I'm talking tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of times, we can help you figure out the right licensing for that. Next slide. And then I'm closing with this. So this is just our new pricing as November 1st for Power Pages, our portal experience, right? And on the left here, you can see authenticated. Why we do that is we want to know who you are. So when you fill out a form, you're glued to that record, right? And then when you come back to the portal and log back in, you could see that process record that you previously submitted for, let's say, a status update, notes from a manager, approve, reject, whatever that is, right? So I can basically create a record or interact with previously submitted records. That's the purpose of authentication, and it gets cheaper as it goes. On the right side, more of anonymous is more like, hey, I go to a website, all I'm doing is reviewing data, but I'm not actually creating records. And that's more like just a typical website, but we do have some EDU customers that are doing anonymous portals for, let's just say, displaying a knowledge base or articles they want to share, right? So seeing a little bit more of that. It's very secure, but it's not meant to be logging into in order to create records. I know I'm going super fast, but I want to give time for Craig to talk, and we certainly don't want this to be the one and only time. We would love to hear from you. I'll pass it to you, Craig.
Thank you, Stan. So the next piece we're talking about, and what we're finding is we have a number of customers, several customers that identified the capability, Power Platform. They see a need, there's a fit, there's some solutions that we can bring to the table. But what we're also realizing is, particularly in IT, there's giant stop sign. There's concern of, I'm not turning this loose in the environment until we have our proper center of excellence. And center of excellence can be, is universally defined specific to your organization. But as we start to add more low code developers, and we really are low code developers, even though Stan is dangerous, but he's still a developer. And so we need to be able to account for some of these strategies around compliance, data integrity, application lifecycle management, security, who can access what, and how are we managing all that, and where does that all live? So when it comes to a low-code environment in the center of excellence, it's really just coordinating your policies and processes to support your user community. And we're finding that that can take on a number of form and fashion in terms of how you approach that. We also create a bit of confusion because we have several offers that we can help with what that looks like. And so in our world, there's really three primary buckets. There's security. So how are we creating an environment to develop and build apps so that the data loss is managed? Our data loss prevention policies are intact. Then we go to how are we monitoring, making sure that applications that are developed that are working, what telemetry is available to manage and refine what's happening. And then ongoing, how do we extend from the initial ring of developers and consumers to that next group? What are best practices? So the initial piece in the secure, and I know there was a reference to a default environment, and Stan alluded to, the default environment is really your personal productivity. So how am I going to improve and interact with apps or automate elements specific to my personal productivity? I want to create and automate that moves an email or does something beyond what is native with Outlook, for example. So how am I doing that? We want to create separate environments in different levels in different solutions that are created within our environment structure. And then we want to have security based on what that looks like. So we're going to have power users. They're going to have certain environments that they're going to work in. We've got hyperlinks here that help with some that will be available in the deck once we're finished. But really, how are we creating that environment security based on who can access, what is our data retention life cycle, what is our application life cycle, how are we managing the data? Data becomes key. What is our data loss prevention? What access do we want to give to users that we're building? Stan alluded to Premier connectors, and what does that connector do? What access do we have to be able to do it? We don't want to be able to necessarily give access to any data system within our environment. So we can manage what connectors are available, what is eligible to interact with our apps. As far as monitoring, so there is a Center of Excellence toolkit that is available. It is an app. And so what that toolkit does is it allows you to get visibility into your environment. We typically see customers download and install that. It takes a couple of weeks for it to run within your environment to identify. But the number one feedback point we've received is how enlightening the customers are to see who is building apps within their environment, what apps are being built, and the frequency with those apps are interacting. So all of those analytics are all available that you can see within your infrastructure and environment. It really has turned, we've been able to identify what that core group of developers are within who are the citizen developers. A lot of times after users have installed it, the feedback has come back, I didn't know they were building an app. I didn't know we had this out there. I didn't know this environment was there. And so really gives you good visibility into that. Like anything else, it can become overwhelming. And just to give you an idea, there is a DLP policy editor. So you can track and see what connectors are being used, what, depending on your data loss prevention policy, what will happen to an app if you institute some of those. What does a policy need to do if we apply this policy? It's overwhelming for me. Dave and I talk about it all the time. So totally get it. there's a connector usage. So you can see what connectors are being used, how they're being used, who's using them. This is also a good area to identify apps that have been built in this next application monitoring. So what apps have been built? Did somebody build an app that they're no longer using and is just sitting out there? That's maybe something that you can retire that app. So it really gives you good visibility into what apps are out there, who's using them, how often, and helping to bridge the gap between, is this a department that's managing their app, or should this be a campus-wide or institution-wide app that IT needs to manage? So just gives you really good visibility into what's out there. There's some risk assessment capabilities. So apps that are overshared, things like I said here, the orphaned apps. Maybe somebody's no longer there. There's no longer management to it. So this is all included within the Center of Excellence toolkit. And then the last piece is really the adoption and best practices. So there's training. There's several options as to how do we take this forward. What we're finding is a lot of schools have been reluctant to really kind of go full forward with this until their infrastructure and until their governance policies are in place. We have several schools that are on the cusp of that. So,
yeah, I would just add to that. I think as Craig and I work with customers and they see the vision and they want to use it, it's more around how does your business want to operate using Power Platform in the sense of the intake, right? So we want to have decentralized where people can build at will and the citizen developer story and all that, but we still want to know what you're intending on doing. So just sort of laying down the foundation in your business to say, this guy Stan came to us, he wants to build something, ask him the 20 questions. What's your database? What's your purpose? What data will you use? Does it need any premium connectors? Is this external to our business? Just really all those questions, even the licensing questions. You know, what do you know what licenses you need? Or you arrive at that to understand whether or not you have them or you need to procure the licensing to deliver it, right? Then setting them up in the right environment with the policies applied so that they can do what you think they should do, but not let them overextend and consume resources either.
So essentially, the Center of Excellence is a team effort. It is across the board. It's ever evolving in terms of what needs to happen, how things need to go forward, what pieces you need to have. I don't know if I have. Yeah, I don't know why that's built that way. So really, it's what's the strategy? Where are we trying to get to? What's the platform capability? What do we want to turn on or not? How do we support the organization and create an environment for people to build and do that true citizen development without burdening IT with unnecessary support needs? And then how are we administering it? How are we managing that along the way? It is a journey. There's multiple levels to it. And I think from what we've seen, a lot of our customers are in this kind of level 200. So they kind of have the Power Platform. They've got some guardrails in place. We're starting to monitor. We're now starting to kind of dig into the data and the content available within the starter kit. And now we're starting to see more effort put into building multiple environments, carving out development environments before it gets moved into production. So it's an evolution. It's a lot. I think, David, you're spot on. It can be overwhelming for sure. I think the key thing from our standpoint is we're here to help. There's several links. There's several avenues. Unified has several workshops and activities available. We have a number of partner offers that can assist with. The big takeaway I'd ask for here between Stan and myself is we're here to help. If there's questions, how do we get pointed in the right direction? Who do we need to talk to? What does that need to look like? Everyone's different. We're here to help, and we're happy to help.
There's also some good Learn site content out there. So both on governance and as well as just building apps, portals, automate, all the above, right? That you can get out and learn for free out there as well.
Awesome. Well, Craig, thank you so much for coming back. He's come back so many times for us, y'all. And thank you for bringing Stan to the party. We so appreciate it. Do you have a question? I don't know if there's a question. So
I think she's trying.
maybe. All right. Well, maybe we will put it in the chat. All right. So thank you guys so much. I'll go ahead and stop the recording. Here we go.